The stories contained in this podcast are the recollections of the guests we've invited onto the show. We are merely an outlet for people to share their truths, and we accept no legal responsibility for the stories contained herein.
I'm Kendra Sheets.
And I'm Rich Gill.
And this is Enough, a podcast which aims to shine light into the darkened corners of the music industry while discussing the ways we can and should improve ourselves and, in turn, our community. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Enough podcast. I am your co-host, Kendra Sheets.
I'm the other co-host, Rich Gill.
And this is the second edition of Subtext. We are hoping that it will be a bit of education for everyone in regards to some of the phrases that we commonly talk about, along with statistics and just kind of some other ins and outs of all of this.
It's just us.
Sorry.
Just us. Just get to listen to us. So today we're talking about a common manipulation strategy called DARVO. DARVO is an acronym which stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. The original concept was identified by Dr. Jennifer Fried in February of 1997. She defined it as, quote, a reaction that perpetrators may display in response to being held accountable for their behavior, end quote.
To truly deep dive into DARVO, we should talk a little bit first about gaslighting. Gaslighting, or to be gaslit, is a pretty common terminology in today's day-to-day lexicon. I actually make the joke that one of my exes invented gaslighting because at the time that I was going through all of that, it was something that was like commonly talked about the way that it is today. And that was only back in 2008 or 9. So it went from in a few short years, something that really wasn't discussed to something that if you tell someone on the street, they more or less know what you're talking about. The actual term gaslight comes from a play, which is also entitled Gaslight. It was written by Patrick Hamilton. It's about a man who slowly convinces his wife that she's going insane so he can steal her inheritance. He hides and moves things all around their house. And when she notices, he tells her that she's lost them or that she's the one who actually moved them around, but she has no recollection of this. And when she starts to see the gaslighting in her room starting to fade, he tells her that that's not actually happening. And she begins to question her own sanity.
Since we're no longer worried about lantern lighting in our homes, at least most of us, I assume, are not. Let's sort of move this into a more modern day scenario that applies to what we're talking about. Let's say Tim and Gina are a monogamous couple who have been together for just over a year. One day, Gina sees a strange female contact pop up on Tim's phone screen. She asks him about it, and he tells her that she doesn't know what she's talking about. It was Stefan from work, not someone named Steph. She just read it wrong. These interactions increase over the next few months. Gina comes home to find Tim on FaceTime with another woman who he says is a cousin she's never heard about, even though she's met his entire family. When confronted, Tim tells her she's paranoid, she needs to calm down. He's telling her this because he is concerned about her and he loves her. That's what he claims. He stays out late after work every Tuesday and Friday and claims he's just drinking with the guys, but he can never tell her what bar they're at or who is there. He doesn't smell like alcohol, any of the telltale signs that someone was actually out at a bar. When Gina asks him about this, Tim says that she's jealous of him having friends because she's so terrible at being social and maintaining friendships. This is gaslighting at its finest. This constant barrage changes Gina's reality like it did the wife in the play, and she begins to doubt her instincts and her reality.
So what does any of this have to do with DARVO, though, right? Because that's what we're talking about today. DARVO is not only a tactic that's somewhat similar to gaslighting, it can also almost be thought of as a subset of it. So if you have DARVO, you've got gaslighting, but the opposite isn't always true. However, both are tactics that humans are not normally born with. They end up learning through social interactions over time. We started off the episode by breaking down the acronym: deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So let's break this down letter by letter from the perspective of someone accused of assault. We'll start with deny, D. Denial actually consists of three main forms. There's simple denial, where someone denies the reality of it altogether, saying something like, what you're saying never happened, you're just a liar. Then there's minimalization, where someone admits the fact that something did happen, but they deny the seriousness or the impactfulness of what occurred. Something like, yeah, I did it, but it's not a big deal. You're just overreacting. And then there's good old projection, where they admit both that it happened and that it was a serious thing, but they deny responsibility by blaming someone or something else. I may have done it, but you made me. You make me so mad, I can't control myself, and I don't know what to do, so I ended up doing that. It's all your fault.
Moving on to attack. This is where the abuser comes after the victim with verbal attacks. You're just a lying drug addict, alcoholic. You shouldn't be believed or trusted. The last three letters of the acronym are 3 and 1. Reverse, victim, and offender. Actually, you're the one who assaulted me. I'm the real victim here. This harkens back to an aspect of the projection form of denial as well. A really great example of this behavior can be seen in the testimony of Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Ugh, worst.
A lot of us watched this. It was pretty gross.
Infuriating.
So infuriating. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. If you haven't watched it, go on YouTube and look up some of it.
But like, make yourself a drink or like plan to do like an anger nap right afterwards. It's not something you can watch lightly and be like, I'm going to get on with my day and be cool.
Yeah, exactly. So Kavanaugh was a Trump Supreme Court nominee with a, let's say, shady past, which needed to be cleared up before taking the bench of the Supreme Court. He was accused of sexual assault years prior. It started in high school, went through college. There was a lot there. He testified to it on September 27th, 2018. If you watched it, you'll remember his testimony started with him calmly rejecting the claim, deny. Then it turned to obvious fury, attack. Before there were tears, reverse.
That was my least favorite part.
And him saying, I like beer, I still drink beer. Like, what? Didn't make any sense. And then ended with statements of unfair treatment, victim, and finally he lamented on how his life had been ruined by those leveling the charges against him, offender.
DARVO also can be defined in layman's terms as just purely blame shifting or victim blaming. It's a tactic where the victim is made to feel like they're the one who is the problem or the one at fault. It can also control how others see the victim or the target and the conflict. The abuser is able to craft a story which is used to cultivate biases against the victim and rally bystanders against them as well. For DARVO to occur, there needs to be some sort of power dynamic imbalance. It tends to occur when the abuser, usually but not always a straight white male, has more social capital than the survivor. Usually, but not always, a female, someone who's non-binary, people of color, LGBTQ, pretty much anyone who's not a straight white male. In these situations, there's no amount of evidence that will suffice as proof of the abuser's transgressions. You can bring your screenshots, you can have your voicemails, you can bring all your receipts. It won't do shit. The victim will not be believed within a social circle which has been groomed by the manipulator. Instead, they will be subjected to victim blaming by the whole of the group. And the group's empathy and admiration for the manipulator is then turned and weaponized and used to encourage negative biases about the recipient of abuse. We have both seen this play out in real time with people that we actually know who have come forward with stories of abuse or assault. And it is amazing to witness the mental gymnastics that accused individuals will go through to convince people that they are the ones who were wrong.
Why do bystanders participate in what is called collective betrayal? When people see something wrong, they do the right thing and call it out and actively act against it, right? That's what we would assume. That's what you'd think, but not always. According to Dr. Fried, betrayal blindness is a survival mechanism. While Fried's 1997 paper's main source of study is child inner family abuse, she dives into detail about how and why people block things out, why we become numb or even dismissive to hurtful events. Let's inject this example with a little common day music culture that we see so often these days. Let's say a member of a band is called out as a rapist.
I'm shocked. I'm absolutely floored. This would never happen in real life.
Not in our scene.
No, definitely not.
One person comes forward. Then another person comes forward. Then there's an entire list of people. Plus, there are those behind the scenes who aren't ready to share their personal story of assault, but are confirming in social media comments or DMs or private chat groups that they've heard things too. Calls are made for the band to break up, for the label, booking agent, management to drop them, for other bands to remove themselves from the inner circle of this person, and for their fans to throw the records in the trash. But they don't. If this band member is an abusive piece of shit, why would anyone want to continue to platform or support him, or even be in the nearby vicinity of someone who does support them?
That, unfortunately, is because humans are designed to yield to controversy in the interest of looking out for themselves to avoid any sort of pain or suffering or loss that could occur if they sympathize with the target. If, let's say, the label that this band is on does nothing with this news, or if they even side with the band member or the band, then all of the other bands on said label are stuck in a very tenuous place. They have two options. They can either choose to follow the label and do nothing, say nothing, do not react, or they can speak out against the band member or the band, knowing that what has happened is wrong. But this very action could threaten a very necessary relationship for them, the relationship with their label. They could lose the ability to tour. They could lose all of their booking contacts. They would lose the ability to have someone pay for part or all or, a chunk of the recording, the distribution of their next album, really anything that their contract may include. So instead, they choose to do nothing. Then there are others who assign more value to the abuser that they are tied with or look up to than the faceless victim. So it's in their best interest to empathize with the abuser instead of the abused. I do not care how small your music community is, whether it's a tiny little Midwest local 20-person scene in a basement, or we're talking about some large scale, giant park festival with 12 stages and whatever the shit. It does not matter. Small, large, either way, there are certain people in this community that are treated like top billed world famous rock stars, like AC/DC, White Snake, middle of the 80s style, like I want a pinball machine in my back green room type
White
of shit.
Snake?
I don't know. Fucking 80s. I don't know. Like Poison? I don't know.
Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue?
Oh, well, I did watch Pam and Tommy. I guess I could have said Crew, but but you get what I'm saying. They're treated like just, the biggest fucking rock stars in the world. And there are people that you can catch at the local dive bar. They're not big, they're not big wigs. They're not that big of a deal. But people want to side with famous people. It's so much more fun to be around someone who's famous, who's done something, who's put something out into the world, right? So they want to side with someone who wrote the lyrics that got them through that really hard time in high school. It's just nicer to do so, right? These people also now have the possibility of gaining social capital. We could call that, I don't know, punk points, perhaps? Maybe.
I think we should.
They could gain these social capital points by supporting the abuser when everyone else is jumping ship. So it's kind of that like, I've been here the whole time, I'll never leave you, they were just fair weather fans kind of mentality. So they end up staying, showing, their allegiance to this pseudo famous person in hopes of some sort of social capital gain.
In the music scene that we're talking about, that we're involved in, that this podcast was started to address, the punk indie scene, it's supposed to be based on rocking the boat, ruffling feathers, going against the norm. So what are we doing with pacified behavior? It's long past time for fans of music, of movies, of books, the arts in general, to step back and really take a look at who you're supporting and where and on who you're spending your money and your time. People have limited amounts of both. And there are so many other amazing bands out there. There are so many other incredibly creative, underexposed artists out there. That goes for bands, that goes for filmmakers, writers, artists, all of them. Give those people a shot. It's a lot more fulfilling than forcing your brain through the mental gymnastics of trying to justify supporting another man who just blame shifted a survivor of rape so he can continue to make the terrible music to help soften his sad, sad midlife crisis. Enough is a podcast centering on abuse, harassment, and assault in the music scene. To help get the word out, please like or subscribe and share with your friends. If you have been on the receiving end of harm from someone, be it artist, venue owner, audience member, or someone else, and would like to share your story on a future episode, please reach out to us at thisisenoughpodcast@gmail.com. All correspondences are kept confidential.